Do you know the feeling of having your best laid breastfeeding plans work out differently than you expected? This is definitely the case for my guest today, who dove hook, line, and sinker into birth work after she had her first empowering birth. And now she has 4 children of her own and has her whole life revolving around birth work and breastfeeding work, and is on her way to becoming an IBCLC while breastfeeding her 2 twins. So I can't wait for you to hear her stories of feeding 2 singletons and a set of twins, and the challenges that came up along the way with feeding each of her babies and how she handled them. Enjoy this beautiful story.
So my name is Ashley Beckwith. I'm the owner of Monadnock Perinatal LLC out of Swansea, New Hampshire. I am a certified breastfeeding specialist, a certified birth doula, postpartum doula, baby wearing consultant, placenta specialist, and I am a cloth diaper advocate. I also do childbirth education and PAIL advocate. So it's pregnancy and infants loss. I kind of started this journey back in 2017 after the birth of my daughter. I had a very empowering moment of pulling her into this world. And once all the hormones settled and, we were kind of, leaving the hospital, going home, I had this moment where I'm like, all women should feel like this. I feel like I need to help other people have this type of journey. So from then I kind of decided to start my path into the birth working world. And from there, I started all my certifications. A few kids later, here I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how many children do you have?
So my daughter just turned 6. My son is 3.5, and my twins are almost 3 months old.
Wow. Yeah. That's amazing. So that means you have 4 baby feeding stories, 2 of which you are in the middle of still.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. And many of us who do birth work enter because of our own experiences, either because we had an empowering experience that we want everyone else to have, or because we had a disempowering experience and we want to change that for other people. Yeah. So we'll make sure all of your information gets linked so that people who live in and around Swansea can reach out to you. Is some of your work online as well? Some of the educational work?
Yes. So I am able to see some clients virtually with my lactation, with birth doula support, childbirth education support, and then also with the cloth diaper and baby wearing, I'm able to see people virtually as well.
Great. Awesome. Okay. So I want to take you back to long before you had a family of your own, back into your childhood, your cultural upbringing, and tell me about your experiences of baby feeding and what you saw when it came to baby feeding as a child, growing up into your childhood and into your teens and 20s.
So I actually don't recall very much of seeing any with family members. Myself and my 2 siblings, we were all formula fed. I was the oldest daughter, granddaughter, niece. So I didn't have older cousins. I don't recall seeing any of my mom's friends. I really don't. So when I had my daughter, it was this was the first experience, and I just knew these are what my breasts were made to do. These are my intentions. I don't want to formula feed, and I just made it work from there.
Yeah. And so then when you said that you had this empowering birth experience in the hospital, did you prepare to have a really empowering experience? Did the birth bug bite you in pregnancy, or did that really happen after the fact?
I think the whole experience kind of came afterwards. I didn't do any childbirth education. I was the first out of my group of friends to become pregnant. So I didn't have a really close friend that I had helped in that moment when they were having their children. So I kind of just rolled with it. Like I went to some prenatal appointments and I was like, you know what? I'm strong. I am capable. I don't want to have a medicated birth. So I stuck to that. And my daughter was an unmedicated vaginal birth. I pulled her into this world. She was a water birth. So I pulled her right in on my chest and it kind of just went from there.
Wow. That's really unusual to just go in with sheer willpower and come out with those outcomes. That's pretty incredible.
I definitely, looking back now, having the education that I did, like I had quite a bit of back labor, and looking back now, I know she was not in the most optimal position. But I did whatever was comfortable. You know, I was in the pool for quite a bit of time. You know, whatever positions were comfortable. I was eating and drinking. At that time, her dad was supporting me. It was very dim. There was no one in the room, like a nurse here and there kind of thing. So I think that is what just made the moment. Looking back now, I know that like I was a tough cookie to be able to do that with zero education.
Okay, so then tell me how that impacted your first feeding experience and then what that meant for your subsequent feeding experiences.
Sure. So I had, like I said, zero education. I had no one that I really watched personally. I mean, I believe, I looked up maybe a couple YouTube videos pertaining to, what to expect or something like that, but without any like education or knowledge going into it. I was kind of going in blind. My daughter, if I recall correctly, it took a little bit for her to latch. I'm going to say that we were closer to that hour mark. By the time she kind of came to, and I shouldn't say come to, like kind of came to the senses of, all right, this is what we're going to do. And with her latch, once she latched on, from there on, it was great. Like I didn't have latching issues. Obviously, like looking at pictures, when you see some people feeding, they're using like the cross cradle or the cradle position. So like I just recalled seeing those pictures and holding my daughter in those. And at first they didn't really work great. She actually did better in the football hold, but that's something that like one of the lactation consultants in the hospital helped me with. By the time we were discharged, everything was fine. My milk, came in a few days later. I didn't really have any issues until she was a few months old. I developed a little bit of an oversupply, and I had mastitis and we had thrush, and it was just a few things that I was like, wow, this is a lot. And being that I didn't have friends or that were there to look, to talk with over it or anything like that, I didn't have an idea like this isn't great. And then once it became pretty painful and I'm like, okay, this is like razor blades while nursing, I'm like, I need to ask for help. And then I ended up calling, the hospital back in the labor and delivery, and they're like, oh yeah, we'll, hook you up. This is what's going on. And, a prescription later, things were a little bit better. And then I kind of just went down the rabbit hole after that with, looking into different nursing things. What was kind of going on? Why might this be happening? Was it, a bra that I wore was too tight? And then I realized that when she started sleeping through the night, that's when I was having like a little bit of issues with my supply, being super engorged in the morning. Even after pumping, I was still getting like, I think 10, 12 ounces or something like that. And, regulating myself and kind of going back from that. Yeah. Yes. Which read me like now with all my education. So I have PCOS, and I know now that some either have undersupply or an oversupply. And I definitely think that I'm in that oversupply category. Yep. Because not only did I have it with her, I did with my son, and even with the twins now, I'm feeding them just fine, and I still have extra.
Yeah. So with your daughter, were you pumping on top of feeding her from your body?
Not until, I want to say I didn't start pumping until she was like 3.5, 4 months old. I exclusively breastfed until then. And when I started looking into going back to work for a little bit, then I had started pumping. And then I kind of stuck to the schedule that I, found online, every few hours, this or that, and before he went to bed. And I kind of just made that work.
Mm-hmm. And at what point did you say you started to experience the mastitis and the thrush?
Probably right around that same time.
Right around that same time.
Yep.
Yeah. So potentially she was more efficient at removing milk than your pump.
Yes. And now looking back, with the education that I have, I realized that I was just using the standard flange that came with the breast pump. And a lot of times I recall nursing and leaking on the other side. And I was using reusable pads for the longest time, which were great because I wanted to be sustainable. Like I cloth diapered all my kids. I'm really into that crunchy part of that. But my supply and my flow and when I would have my letdown was so much that I was soaking the reusable pads. And I believe that's, how the yeast and everything came from that. So I had to switch to exclusively using disposable pads because it was the only thing that was able to kind of pull the moisture away.
Yeah, I know. I love the idea of reusable breast pads, but they can be problematic. They just don't wick the moisture well enough, especially for really milky people. And often people have higher incidence of thrush.
And I think it was after like my second incident that I realized kind of that's what was happening. And I was like, I'm sorry. I love you. I love your idea, but I can't.
Yeah. So the people that you did have around when they heard about the difficulty you were experiencing, were they supportive of you finding solutions?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So you didn't have anybody who was like, why are you putting yourself through this when this is so difficult?
Oh, no, not at all. Everyone was like, you go, girl, you do your thing. And they were so beyond proud of me that, I made it a week, a month. My mom bought me these little, like charms that go on your key ring. And I want to say it's like first feed, like 1 week, 1 month. I can't remember.
Yeah.
We made it. I pumped until a year. She only nursed till about 5 months, but I, didn't get that last charm. And I remember looking like after we were done with our journey, trying to find where she ordered them from, and I couldn't find them. So I feel like a little part of me is incomplete, but no, I knew I made it that far. So going to that, we pumped and didn't quite make it nursing. My daughter around, I want to say 5.5 months, she had gotten her first or second tooth, I can't remember. But she bit down. And when she bit down, I screamed and I scared her. And she would not latch after that. And I had tried, and she would just turn away and she would give me this look and curl her lip. And I'm like, I'm so sorry I scared you. But I knew that I had to keep going. So like from then on, I just pumped exclusively until she was a year old. And then at that point, because I was pumping, I was able to kind of regulate my supply a little bit better because I was only pumping at those times and not nursing. So the journey went for a circle. We went around. My goal was 1 year. I was so happy to make it to a year. But we had our struggles, and that's what brought me to my lactation education that I have now. So I'm a certified breastfeeding specialist. I am currently an IBCLC student on pathway number 3. I'm halfway through my hours. I've done my education and everything like that. So I'm hoping that I'll be sitting next spring for my.
So did you, when you realized that you were not, she was basically having that nursing strike after your understandably strong reaction to her chomping down on you, how did you feel about realizing that your journey had suddenly changed?
Devastated. I was devastated. I know our bond wasn't completely lost because I was still nurturing her. She was still getting my milk, but the actual nursing aspect of it was done, and that it was very sad. I had looked forward to, our night nurses. With all of my children, I have co-slept with them, and just having that, bonding moment. And it was right around that time too, that she had kind of had her nursing strike, that we had transitioned her into sleeping in a bassinet sometimes, and she was completely unfazed. And I'm just like, no, I'm not ready for this yet. I mean, it was definitely nice to have my bed, but I wasn't quite ready for, I feel like all of it kind of happened all around, within a few months. It was definitely a lot to unbag.
Yeah, it seems like her nighttime sleep, like she slept through the night pretty early. It sounds like.
I want to say I think she was 6 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
I'm none of my other kids have done that, but
I'm like, when you get that unicorn baby as your first one, and then you think it's all because of your great parenting or something, and then you get shocked when your others don't do it.
Oh no, my son. Oh yeah, no, bipolar opposite, complete opposite. I was like, she's the easy one. We got, full nights of sleep from 6 weeks on, and then my son, I had to wean at a year, from co-sleeping, because he was just suckling and nursing all night, and I got no sleep. And I was like, we can nurse during the day, but nighttime nursing, I need some sleep.
Yeah.
So it was complete polar opposite.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I can understand how, just going back to your daughter for a second, how that would be devastating from one moment to the next, to realize this is totally different than what it has been.
Yep. And at that point, when she went through the nursing strike, like I said, I was back to work at that point. So, I enjoyed my afternoons and evenings, and, if she happened to wake up in the middle of the night to nurse or anything like that. And going strictly to pumping was just a whole, 180 turn. And then pumping definitely is hard because you're pumping, but you also have to feed at the same time, kind of thing. Luckily it wasn't for me. I feel it was a little bit easier not having a newborn and pumping and feeding at the same time, because I feel like that to me would have been a lot. And I know people do it all day, every day, but to me, that would have been a lot to do.
Yeah, it is. All right. So then you made it through pumping till a year with your daughter. And what's the age difference between your daughter and your son?
So 2.5 years. So I had my daughter, my spouse and I had 2 losses, and then we had my son. So it's about 2.5 years. Okay. Yeah, almost 3 years.
I have a really busy week coming up, and I thought, what better way to reduce my stress than to go onto feastandfettle.com and order meals for that week, so I can just take one thing off of my plate by putting delicious meals onto my plate. See what I did there? So I went on to their website. It's really easy to use. I looked at all of the menu options for the week, and some of the things I'm excited about are some grilled steak tips with a delicious Thai peanut sauce and some green beans with a soy sesame sauce that's on the side. But there's so many other things. And that is one of the ways that I am choosing to provide self-care for myself so that I can reduce my stress load. If you would like to do the same and spend more time with your family and less time worrying about what's for dinner, go to feastandfettle.com to get home cooked meals delivered right to your front door. And you can get $30 off your first week's delivery by using my code MILK, MILK. And just let somebody else cook for you. You won't regret it.
We all know that one of the barriers to feeding our babies breast milk is lack of access to care. And what I would love to do to try to close that gap is have a third type of podcast episode where I provide lactation consulting for clients who don't have access to lactation consultants. Either they don't have insurance or their insurance does not cover lactation consulting for whatever reason. So if you are in this position, or you know somebody who is, and you would love to do a consult with me, and you don't mind being recorded, both your voice and video, and have it aired on the podcast, reach out to me so that both you and the people listening can benefit from that consult.
Tell me a little bit about how things played out with your son's birth, with feeding in mind, knowing what you know about how birth can impact feeding.
Yeah. So with my first son, I had my personal experience from nursing my daughter. I had very, very little education wise because I didn't start the actual lactation education that I did until after he was born. So just having that experience, I knew to, latch immediately, do what I could do. I had a birth center birth with my son. I had intended a home birth, but I wasn't quite educated in the fact that the midwives actually pick up after you. I was like, I don't want to have to pick up the mess, but it is what it is. He barely made it to the birth center. He came very quick. It was 19 minutes and he was out very, very quick.
Wow.
But he latched on right afterwards. We were home a couple hours later. Nursing with my son was a breeze. He was great at latching. He was efficient at milk transfer. It was textbook great. I had absolutely no issues with him until it came creeping up on the year when we were co-sleeping still. And I was like, I would like to sleep a little bit at night and maybe roll over and get restful sleep. Because anyone who's co-slept, you sleep, but you're not getting deep sleep because you have your child in mind. So you're practicing safe sleep and it's a lighter sleep. And I just wanted that deep sleep so bad.
Yeah. And was he still a frequent nurser at night?
Very frequent.
Mm-hmm.
Very frequent to the point where there was definitely at times where I think that he was nursing the entire night. I swear.
Mm-hmm.
But I just knew that, at that point being back to work, having 2 children, it was unrealistic to sit there and nurse all night kind of thing. So I weaned at night. I did have a severe oversupply with my son. When I had started pumping, I want to say it was right around probably 10 weeks because I went back to work at 12 or 13 weeks with my son. So I think I started pumping right around 10 weeks or so. And I wasn't necessarily adding too many pumping sessions because at that point we were in the peak of COVID. So my son was born in November. I went back to work for 1 week in March, I believe. And I think it was March. And I went back to work for a week and then I was sent to work from home. And at that point he was very little. So I had him with me and because I'd already started pumping to return to work, I kind of just kept pumping a little bit here and there kind of thing. But when I was pumping, I was removing quite a bit. Because of the oversupply, my son did have some diapers that were off in color or frothy looking. I know now that's because of my oversupply, but then I wasn't quite as sure. In my entire pumping journey with my son until I had stopped pumping, I stopped pumping at a year. He nursed, I want to say almost until 14 months.
Mm-hmm.
I donated 60 gallons of milk.
Wow.
I worked with the midwives that I had birthed with. They approached me at one point. They knew that I had a bit of an oversupply, and they asked if I had any milk to donate to a mom that had identical twin girls. And I said, yeah, like I got a whole freezer full, I don't need it. I'm more than willing to donate. And I solemnly supplied those identical girls from birth until 5 months. I donated to friends and family. Of my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So of my 5, well, I should say 5 nieces and nephews on my family's side, I supplied at one point all but 2 of them. And because they're more recent, I should say. And then on my spouse's side, I had supplied some milk to his nephew. There's family friends that I had donated to. So it was definitely a very rewarding experience to be able to help out so many people. Now that I have the twins, like I'm pumping sparingly. I don't want to be pumping that much. So right. I mean, I'm feeding the twins. I definitely know that I have enough to feed both of them, and I'm still removing some. But when I tell you I am pumping sparingly, I do not want to deal with the 60 gallons again. As absolutely rewarding as it was, not my cup of tea.
Yeah, it's also a lot of work to be.
It is
that much milk. Yeah,
it is. And like, I wasn't educated on how often you're supposed to be, changing parts and all this. And still at that point, I was pumping with the wrong size flange for my son. Like when I tell you, I didn't know this stuff until I actually went through like the actual education part of it, that I realized like this whole time I was pumping with a flange size way too big for me.
Yeah.
But it's also something where I learned that, like TMI, but like I have elastic nipples. So even though I was too big for myself, like textbook, I don't necessarily fit what my flange size is because of the elasticity. So yes, it wasn't in my favor, but I think that my body was just so used to using that wrong flange size that, and with the oversupply, it worked.
But luckily you had enough milk that despite the wrong sizes, it didn't impact you too much.
Nope. No. And like I said, I definitely, so coming into the twins, I knew I didn't want to pump that much. So kind of the twins, they're totally different. Every way, shape or form. Their birth journey was completely different. I had 2 unmedicated vaginal births with both of my oldest and my oldest son. And going in to this pregnancy, before we learned they were twins, like I really wanted a home birth, unmedicated, wanted to do my jam at home. Surprise twins. Surprise New Hampshire laws are very binding with who can be in the home for hospital births. And being that they were mono-di twins, being identical, we just decided to just do a hospital birth in the absolute hopes that we could have our journey be as close to what we wanted at home. I made it to 38 and 6 and 39. So they have separate birthdays.
Wow.
Yes. So my identical twins have separate birthdays.
Oh my gosh.
It's horrible. So, I check into appointments and they're like, name and date of birth. I give them last name, and then I'm like 328 and then 329. And they look at me and I'm like, don't even ask. So my first son was, or I should say my first son, the first twin A, Lincoln, he came super quick. So we were already in the hospital. I ended up getting induced. It was super low intervention. Like when I walked in there and I agreed to a cervical check, I was already like 4.5, I think, and like 100% effaced. Like for all I know, I could have gone into labor that evening. So once the ball kind of got going, I got in the birth tub, and it went from kind of laboring to his head is out, and he was out. I think my spouse and like one nurse were in the room, And in New Hampshire hospitals, you're not exactly supposed to have water births. And well, he came in the water. So we crawled over to the bed, did whatever we had to do to kind of get Twin B situated. And there we sat. Twin B was very content that he had a lot of room then. And needless to say, 9.5 hours later, I ended up in a cesarean. Wasn't ideal.
Oh, no.
No, it wasn't ideal at all. But that is how we came to the separate birthdays. First one was born a little after 4, and the cesarean was a little after 1. So they will have their own birthday parties from now on out. They will have their own birthdays.
Have you looked into what percentage of twins have separate birthdays?
I don't, but I know it is super, super slim. Like,
okay.
I think it's super slim. I remember like telling myself like to make a mental note to look into it like after they were born, and then when mom life with 2 other kids, I completely forgot to look into it.
Right. Yeah.
I'll make a mental note to actually look into it though.
Yeah, it's really interesting that played out that way.
Yeah, I was the talk of the maternity ward, being that identical twins born on separate days. One was vaginal, one was cesarean. Like it was definitely it was not your typical twin birth whatsoever.
No, not at all.
Once Lincoln was born, got out of the water right to the bed. He was nursing like minutes after. Like he latched right on. There was a lot going on. So now, I mean, when I had the twins, I was already well into all my lactation education. I had already started my process of becoming an IBCLC. So I was very educated on what to look for. I'd already nursed 2 other kids. So I had, how things went then. The first couple latches, I guess I wasn't paying attention because I was still in labor to have my second. So there was a lot going on.
Yeah.
After I had the cesarean, they were still doing what they were doing. I had my son, Liam, twin B, was on my chest. He latched immediately. And all I kept telling myself is at this point, like I had an epidural. I knew I needed to keep them latched and they needed to keep nursing. Like I knew with medication and with the procedure, like I needed to keep them both going. And I told my spouse that. I said, if any point I'm not in the capacity to hold the children, that I want you to nurse them for me. And he was well aware and completely 110% like supportive, whether if he needed to latch them himself or to pump for me. Like that was my one wish. Like I want to nurse these 2 kids. I will do what I need to do. Once we kind of got settled, so I got very sick from the procedure. I ended up kind of vomiting for like 13 hours after it. So it was very hard to like nurse and to deal with that. Back up like 10 seconds from that. They were both tandem nursing like an hour and a half after my procedure. So that was like a milestone. I was so proud of myself for that.
Yeah.
So the next day I kind of realized that I had a bit of pinching from both of them, one worse than the other. I kind of took a gander in their mouths, noticed that both of them had pretty restrictive tissues on both their lips and their tongues. And one had a lot more restrictiveness in their tongue than the other. I made a call to an IBCLC and I said, I need the boys looked at and I need a referral sent to have these released like ASAP because I need to make sure that they have proper milk transfer because I need to make sure that I'm breastfeeding my kids. Like this is my wish to breastfeed them both. I want to tandem feed. Like I want to nurture that relationship. And I knew that having that release done would help the pain that I was having at that point. All my hormones and all the endorphins kind of settled. And I was able to realize that, this doesn't feel quite like nursing my other 2 kids did.
So how quickly did you get in and what was that experience like?
2 weeks. I think it took 2 weeks to be seen. We were seen up in Claremont by Dr. Waymeyer. She did an amazing job. We went in, we kind of had the assessment. She agreed with the assessment that was done with the IBCLC. She explained everything for the procedure for us. She actually said that the boys were the first on their new CO2 machine. So they had just upgraded their machine. They were away from me for minutes. Like when I say minutes, I don't even think it was 2 minutes. It didn't feel like that long at all. They were literally right back. As soon as they came back to me, they latched on. With both of them, I could feel like an immediate difference with how they were latching. One of them was still a tiny bit pinchy, but it resolved within, I don't know, a few days or so. We were doing the exercises constantly. And with twins, you have twice the work. It's, twice the kids, twice the amount of exercises. Even still to this day, I tandem feed them both almost at I'd say probably 90 to 95% of feedings. They're both tandem fed. For me, it's easier to get it done at one time. They're both good to go. And then on to whatever we're doing next. I feel like the days that we have, I call them off days. So if one's nursing, one's sleeping, and then the other one's nursing, I feel like those days take a very long time and I don't get much done at all because I feel like I'm literally nursing all day.
So when you said you were doing exercises, are you talking about the tongue strengthening exercises, or are you talking about the stretches to keep the release from reattaching?
All the above.
Okay.
So I was doing both the lip stretches and tongue stretches. What I found easiest to me, so I was told to do them every 4 hours. What I found in my situation was easiest, instead of trying to remember a time on a clock when I'm not looking at a clock all the time, was anytime I was nursing. If I was going to nurse them, it was easiest for me to do their stretches but at any time we were nursing. So, if they were nursing, if I was going through a cluster feeding, I wasn't doing it every single time. I'd wait a couple feeds in between, but generally speaking, because they're nursing every couple hours, I would do their stretches and then they would nurse instead of trying to remember or setting an alarm on my clock or on my phone to do it. It's just what worked for me.
Yeah. Okay. And then also you were doing tongue strengthening, which are more fun and engaging for the baby. It's not as torturous as the stretches.
Yep. We had our times for that too. Both myself and my spouse were doing them. Being that they were nursing with me, I was primarily doing them. He also felt that his fingers were too big for a lot of the exercises or stretches. So I found it was easier for me to do them, to remember they got done. But yes, we were both as involved. And Dr. Waymeyer was absolutely great when it came to letting us know what needed to be done. If we had any questions, she actually called for a follow-up. I think it was exactly a week afterwards. See if we had any questions, how the exercises were going, how everything looked. And how we kind of just went from there.
And when you went to that IBCLC, did she offer anything? Were you doing any of the tongue strengthening exercises in advance of the procedure as well? Or was there any other body work that you were doing before the procedure?
Before the procedure, so I was doing some of the exercises myself, and I had been in consult with the IBCLC, so we were kind of working on that. After the kids had the releases done, they did see a chiropractic care here locally, and kind of just got to see what was going on. One of my sons had absolutely no issues. The one that actually did have the more restricted tongue tissues had a little bit of tension that we had to work through. That's why, even as myself, as the certified breastfeeding specialist, I tell anyone who's having a lot of issues, I refer them to chiropractic care, because everything in the body connectively, whether it's your oral tissues down to your toes, everything's connected in one way, shape, or form of another. So I refer a lot of my clients out too. So I thought it was only fitting to, if I'm doing that and referring my clients to do that, I need to also be practicing the same thing.
So you had the tongue tie procedure, and that basically resolved any pain you were feeling with the twins. Is that right?
Yep. So like I said, it was almost immediate for both of them. One of them I could feel just a little bit more pinching for like a few days. But, after doing the stretches and the exercises, I felt that it resolved quite a bit, actually up until very recently. So my son that had the more restrictive tissues just in the past couple of weeks had started clicking again. And I'm like, well, I know I did the exercises. I know I did the stretches. Things looked great. I'm not sure where this came from until I realized that we had been using the bottle a little more. I'd been doing a couple postpartum shifts. So I was gone for X amount of time. I would come home. He would go to nurse. He would nurse for a little bit, and then I'd hear the clicking. And I'm like, well, this is a little bit different. It's come on a little bit since then. So I think we're going to go through another round of digging into this a little deeper. And if we have to have a second revision done, that's the route we'll have to go. But he's definitely having the loud clicking noises. So his tongue is getting tired and slapping down. And it's definitely new. But other than that, like the nursing journey has been great with both of the twins post revisions.
Yeah. Wow. That's great.
Yep.
And what do you imagine, like, do you think you'll do any birth or postpartum doula work within this first year of their lives?
Yep. So I've already had a few postpartum overnights shifts. So generally speaking, it's easier for me to do those anyways. My spouse will have the boys at night. And so it's easier for us to kind of have an off schedule. I do have birth doula clients due within the year. One of them coming up shortly. I have milk in the freezer. I made it very well aware to my clients that every X amount of time that I would need to relieve myself, they were all more than accommodating. Do what you need to do. I know, if it's time to push, whatever it is, my body can wait a couple more minutes. It's not the end of the world. But no, they're all super accommodating to me relieving myself of that, of needing to pump, offering up, my clients that I do have, birth doula clients that I have scheduled for this year are all home births. So they're more than accommodating of letting me use their fridge or freezer, and then giving me a separate room if I need to. I do plan to bring both my wall pump and my portable pump that I have. I'll use whatever I guess seems fitting at the time. And then continue on with whatever postpartum or birth. I am taking a lot less birth doula clients this year due to the fact I'm concentrating most of my time with my placenta encapsulation part of my business, and being that I am under mentorship to become an IBCLC. So I'm doing a lot of shadowing with my mentor. So I want to put my main focus on the twins, nursing the twins, my lactation. And then I'm just using the placenta encapsulation to kind of supplement income in that aspect, but I'm able to plan a little bit more. So yes, I'm on call for the births, but I have scheduled hours that I pick things up or they're delivered to me. So it's a lot more accommodating than being gone for 4 to 24 or 36 hours for a birth.
Yes. I do not take on birth clients any longer.
I love it. It's an absolute, I don't even know the word. You know the feeling. It's
euphoric when you're in the, but all the planning around that moment is very challenging. Yeah.
It is.
And I commend all the people who do it for years and years on end.
Yep. I mean, this is my third year of officially with the title of birth doula. So I had supported family and friends after the birth of my daughter in their births, not knowing that that's what an actual role of a doula was. It wasn't until I looked into being a midwife did I realize that most midwifery schoolings request that you're a doula beforehand. And I'm like, oh, what's a But yes, in my foreseeable future, I plan to only take birth dual clients here and there. I will be focusing the main part of my business on lactation and placenta work, just due to the ability to schedule, which is very needed with my children at this time.
Yes. Awesome. Well, are there any last words of wisdom that you would like to share with people about your baby feeding experiences and what you think that people listening can take with them?
Always follow your intuition. If you feel that something is not right, it probably isn't. If you're in pain, if you feel like, oh, that felt weird, there's probably something going on. And I really encourage people to reach out. If it's not to, an IBCLC, reach out to some sort of, a certified lactation consultant, a certified breastfeeding specialist, anyone with any education, the Leche League, Breastfeeding
a peer
USA,
counselor,
someone or something, reach out to someone. They will be able to point you in the direction to get some help.
Everybody has a scope. So if they feel like what you are experiencing is beyond their scope, if you reach out to a La Leche League leader or a Breastfeeding USA counselor and what you are experiencing is beyond how they can help you, they will tell you and they will say, this is more serious than what I can help you with. And here's the name of a trusted IBCLC. And I think you should see them.
Yeah, definitely. And then the only other note that I have is to twin moms that are deciding to go through nursing both and tandem feeding. Like, you go, it is work, but it is so rewarding. Like, definitely one of my most cherishable moments to this day of breastfeeding all of my children is the tandem feeding with both of my twins. I just, it's an overwhelming amount of joy that I get from it. And I hope that other twin moms that feel like they're getting completely overwhelmed or not sure where to go, what to do, to reach out for help. Like, there's support everywhere, especially for twin moms. I found that the twin mom community is like so supportive of everything. If this isn't working out, try this. If this isn't working out, we'll help you with this. So definitely reach out for help.
That's awesome. And maybe you could share with me some of your favorite twin mom community links and I'll put them in the show notes.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. This has been such a joy to get to talk to you.
You as well.
There is that saying, when you know better, you do better. And I think Ashley's story really exemplifies this for us, that the more she knew, the more empowered she was to feed her babies in the way that was right for her. And what is right for one person is not always right for everybody else, given the circumstances of each individual's family life, work life, how much support they have, how much milk they produce naturally, how much time they have to pump at work or at home, the anatomy of the baby, how much time and money and energy they have into putting into getting the help they need. So I just love Ashley's stories of learning more and growing more and then being on her way to becoming an IBCLC herself. So all of her information is linked in the show notes and you would like to get help from her. And if you have a house full of children or you are pregnant and feeling tired and you want to get one more thing off your plate, don't forget that you can go to feastandfettle.com and get $30 off your first week's order of home-cooked meals delivered right to your door. You can use my code MILK to get $30 off. If you would like to connect with other parents who care about all the barriers that make baby feeding so difficult, join my Making Minutes community group. I'll see you in there. Bye.